Hello students, welcome to my class. Today your last part of your first chapter, The Portrait of a Lady. Your next paragraph. We protested but she ignored our protest. She lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and a rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor means an unhealthy pale appearance, a spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. Explanation of this paragraph. The family protested, tried to stop her, but she lay peacefully on her bed, chanting prayers and doing her telling her beads. Suddenly she stopped and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A calm, pale appearance spread on her face and she was dead. Your last paragraph. We lifted her off the bed and as a customary means as a tradition, laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. And in the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. The sun was setting and had hit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in the courtyard, all over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay, dead and stiff, wrapped in the red shroud. Shroud means a piece of cloth used to wrap a dead person. And my mother fast some bread for them. She broke it into little crumbs the way my grandmother used to and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread when we carried my grandmother's corpus. Corpus means dead body. They flew away quietly, and next morning the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. Okay, explanation of this paragraph. The family lifted her from the bed, laid her on the ground, and wrapped her with the red colored cloth. The thousand of sparrows sat silently near her. The author's mother fast some bread for the birds, but they didn't eat any. They flew away later as the family carried the dead body. The sweeper removed the crumbs. The next morning, the birds were so sensitive they did not want to eat bread, but were mourning the death of the one who had fed them for so many days. Okay, students, this is the chapter, and today we are also discussing again the summary of this chapter. Okay, the summary of this chapter is your chapter begin. In this story, the author draws a pen portrait of his grandmother. He beautifully unfolds his relationship with her while describing her appearance and daily activities. In your first lecture, we are discussing about appearance of the grandmother. The author recalls his grandmother as a very old lady with a wrinkled face. She appeared so old that it was hard for him to believe that she had once been young and pretty. She was short, fat, and a little stooped in appearance. The author remember her moving about the house in spotless white, counting the beads of her rosary while her lips moved constantly in silent prayers. She was not pretty in the traditional sense, yet her serenity made her beautiful. And in your second lecture, we are discussing initial year of togetherness. A life in the village. In the initial year of his life, the author lived with his grandmother in the village, sharing a good friendship. His grandmother used to wake him up in the morning and get him ready for the school. She would hand over to him the things he required in the school after having thick stale chapatis with butter and sugar for breakfast. They used to leave for school. The author's grandmothers always accompanied him to school as it was attached for the temple. It was her habit to carry several steel chapatis for the village dogs, which they used to feed while returning from the school. The grandmother used to sit inside the temple reading holy books, while the narrator learned alphabets and prayer in the school. And then your next lecture, we are also discussing the turning point of their friendship. Your second phase of the chapter, life in the city. The turning point of their friendship came when they moved to the city to stay with the author's grandparents. Though author's parents, sorry, though they shared the same room, his grandmother no longer accompanied him to the school since the author started going in a bus. As years rolled by, they saw less of each other. Meanwhile, to as there were no dogs in the streets, she took to feeding the sparrows. Unlike the village school, the author was not taught about God and the scriptures, which troubled his grandmother. She did not believe in what was being taught at his school and was unhappy as she could not help him with his lessons. Moreover, she was disturbed at the idea of music lesson being given at schools, as she considered music to be unsuitable for gentle folk. Her disapproval was conspicuous in her silence. And your next lecture, we are discussing the grandmother combats her loneliness by feeding the sparrows. When the author started going to the university, he was given a room of his own. It resulted in further gap between them. She accepted her loneliness and rarely spoke to anyone. All day long, she sat spinning the wheel and reciting her prayer. She relaxed for a short time, only in the afternoon, to feed the sparrows who came in large numbers. The bound and level of comfort they shared with her is evident in the fact that they reached even on her legs and head, and she used to be at her happiest self while feeding the sparrows. And your next lecture, we are discussing author leaves for higher studies. The author decided to go to abroad for further studies. He was sure that his grandmother would be upset at his departure. On the contrary, she came to the railway station to see him off. but did not show any emotion. She was absorbed in her prayers, telling the beads of her rosary. She silently kissed the author's forehead, which the author considered to be the last sign of their physical contact. Your next lecture, we are also discussing author's homecoming. On his return after 5 years, the author did not find any change in his grandmother. She was as old as new and remained absorbed in her prayers. Even that day, the happiest moment for her was feeding the sparrows in the evening. For the first time ever, she did not fret. She collected several ladies of the neighborhood and sang songs related to the homecoming of the warriors. She had to be persuaded to stop singing in order to avoid overstraining. However, the next day she was taken ill. And today we are discussing your lecture Grandmother's Death. Though diagnosed with a mild fever by the doctor, grandmother knew that her end was near. She decided to spend the last few hours of her life reciting prayers and telling her beads. Soon, her lips stopped moving and she died. A silent tribute by the sparrows. Your last paragraph. The family went to make arrangement for the grandmother's funeral. As they came with stretcher, they stopped midway to find thousands of sparrows scattered around her dead body. The sparrows mourned the death of the grandmother in utter silence. They ignored the breadcrumbs thrown at them by Arthur's grandmother and flew away silently after the body was carried away for cremations. The breadcrumbs were swept away the next morning. Okay, student, I hope you understand this chapter and your next lecture on tomorrow. Thank you. Have a nice day.